These are my honest thoughts on Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris as a regular American. First off, let's talk about Donald Trump. If you like Donald Trump, I understand why you like him, because I used to like him. I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But in order to understand Trump's appeal in 2015, 2016, we have to understand how he got here. I think we have to start with Reagan. Reaganomics messed everything up. It made it so that worker productivity has gone up, but workers' wages have remained stagnant since the 1970s, I believe. And after that, you had Bill Clinton, who was a conservative Democrat. He did 2 free trade deals known as the North American Free Trade Agreement, and those notoriously shipped American jobs to other countries. And then you had the Bush administration, who lied us into the Iraq War. There were no weapons of mass destruction found. They lied us into a war for oil. FEMA didn't help the Hurricane Katrina victims. And then you had the Great Recession. And then Obama came in promising hope and change, but then he just bailed out Wall Street, and then people's economic conditions didn't get much better after that. Then it was revealed that the NSA was spying on everyone. And then President Obama negotiated another trade deal, which would have outsourced even more American jobs to other countries. It was known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And throughout these years, as you maybe could piece together, the establishment had broken its trust with the American people. People no longer trusted the intelligence agencies. People no longer trusted the White House. People no longer trusted the media. People no longer trusted corporate America. And for all good reasons. There is reason for people not to trust all these institutions. It's because the people were lied to. And then in the beginning of the 2010s, you had 2 populist movements form. One on the left, Occupy Wall Street, and then one on the right, the Tea Party. And then those movements eventually found their leaders in Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. And both of these candidates promised to end corruption and thereby taking the United States government away from the big money interests and giving it back to the people where it belongs. And that is the time I stumbled into politics. I was walking past the TV and I saw a guy on the TV at a rally in Wisconsin saying, "We say to the billionaire class, you can't have it all." And you know which one that is. It was literally the summer after 8th grade, and I was just like, wow, I've never heard a politician speak like this. And he's making sense. He's right. And up until then, I hated politics. I had grown to hate it. Like, I liked it when I was a kid, and then I had grown to hate it because I had associated it with people on TV arguing with each other and not getting anything done. But once I heard that on TV, I went onto my computer, searched up the name Bernie Sanders, and spent the entire night on the internet doing research, watching YouTube videos on Bernie Sanders, and the rest was history. And just being there as a 14-year-old, watching all those Bernie Sanders videos, Bernie made me feel like change was possible. He made me realize that anything is possible. I run up to my dad and I'm like, "Do you know who Bernie Sanders is?" And he's like, "He's an independent." And I was like, "Yeah, watch this video, watch this. And then my dad liked Hillary at the time, but I made him support Bernie. I persuaded him to like Bernie. And I actually just recently, I looked up when that Bernie rally happened. It was in Wisconsin, and it was on my 14th birthday. So anyways, that happened. That's how I got into politics. I was following the entire campaign, learning about politics along the way. I was super excited, super passionate. I felt super hopeful about the future of this country. And then what happened? Bernie lost, but it was found out that the DNC and the Hillary campaign had colluded to take down Bernie. So essentially they had rigged the primary. And this was taken to court, and in court they said, yeah, DNC is a private organization. It doesn't have to be a fair primary. They can rig it. And when I heard that story that the primary was rigged, I was like, this should be the biggest media story in the country. A Democratic primary was rigged, but nobody was talking about it. I felt crazy. I felt like an insane person that I was the only person who knew about this, but nobody else did. And the media wasn't talking about it, even though it was proven. And Bernie kind of brushed it under the rug. I really felt like helpless at that moment. Like, I'm seeing all this injustice happen in my country, but I'm powerless to do anything about it. And from then on, I hated Hillary Clinton. And then comes general election time, and here comes this guy, Donald Trump, who says, oh, the DNC rigged it against Bernie, and I hate the fake news media, and I'm gonna take on crooked Hillary, drain the swamp, and end corruption. And I heard that and thought, wow, I feel really seen right now. I feel like he is speaking for me. I feel very empowered right now. And there were times when in the general election campaign, Donald Trump spoke like Bernie Sanders. There's a 60 Minutes interview where he said, the government's gonna pay for your healthcare. And he said, all these disastrous trade deals shipped your jobs overseas. We're gonna bring your jobs back. And we're gonna end corruption. We're gonna take it to the establishment. We're gonna end the wars. And during the debates, he went after Jeb Bush and said, your brother lied us into the Iraq war. And I was like, wow, he was right when he said that. He still is right when he said that at the time. And when Trump said those things, I felt hopeful. I felt excited. I was only 15 at the time, but would I have voted for Donald Trump if I had the power to vote? No. And at the time I said this too, but Donald Trump said the stuff about they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some of them are good people. And he said the total and complete shutdown of Muslims. And he said he made fun of that disabled reporter. And there was just like a bunch of other stuff that made me, I would never vote for that. Back then I wouldn't, and now I wouldn't. But my point is, he knew what he was doing. He was good at campaigning. He knew how to speak to the forgotten people, the forgotten Americans. And for people who were willing to overlook the bigotry, a lot of people were, and that's why he became our president. There's a Donald Trump closing ad from 2016, and literally, I don't know if you guys know this, like, I don't know how many of you guys were following, I don't know how many of you guys were following politics at the time, but like, if you weren't, you're gonna be amazed at this. If you just remove one line about immigration in there, this is a Bernie Sanders ad. Here, I'll play it right now.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington, and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
And that's why he won. Now, that's what Donald Trump campaigned on. That's what he promised. And I'm going to break down and we're going to see if he actually did it. Okay, here we go. Many people support Donald Trump out of the belief that he will help the working class, aka the 99%. Trump negotiated and put into law what's known as the US, Mexico, and Canada Agreement, which is a free trade agreement that many people say is just like NAFTA, so they call it NAFTA 2.0. And Trump was a guy who railed against NAFTA, but now he's just doing it again, or he just did it again. During the Trump presidency, 200,000 jobs were shipped overseas, and then Donald Trump rewarded those companies $400 billion in taxpayer money. And I'm gonna put all of the sources on the screen so you guys can read about it if you want to. Trump cut taxes for the rich and increased them for the 99%. Trump signed the CARES Act, the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history. When the pandemic started, he could have and should have done UBI and Medicare for all, There's a provision in Obamacare that allows the president in emergency times to expand Obamacare to everybody. Trump did not do that. He didn't do anything like advocate for universal masking, which could have stopped the virus from spreading because Japan did it. He just turned masking into a culture war and spread racism towards Asians. Trump did not follow through on when he said the government will pay for your healthcare. His only healthcare plan was to take away people's healthcare, and that was foiled by John McCain. And Trump admitted on the debate stage this year that he has no healthcare plan. And healthcare is like one of the most prioritized issues amongst the American people when you poll them. I think it's like usually at the top of people's lists. Let's move on to foreign policy. Many people support Donald Trump out of the belief that he is anti-war. The good thing I can say about Trump on foreign policy is he made peace with North Korea, but that was only after beefing with Kim Jong-un on Twitter. In 2018, the Trump administration had meetings with opposition leaders of the Venezuelan military to do a coup on Venezuela. Trump said he wanted to do it for the oil. And in the 2015-2016 debates, Trump was going after Jeb Bush saying, "Your brother led us into the Iraq war. It destabilized the region." And then he attacked Hillary Clinton over the same thing. And he was right. A lot of people support Trump under this guise that he's not a neoconservative. He's not a Bush Republican. He's not like George W. Bush. He's an isolationist. He's in favor of peace. But the reality is, Trump tried to do the exact same stuff. He wanted to topple a government for its oil. In 2019, Saudi Arabia was committing genocide in Yemen. Bernie Sanders had Democrats and Republicans come together to pass a resolution to end US support for the genocide. President Trump vetoed it. President Trump assassinated Iranian General Soleimani in 2020. Do you guys remember that? I feel like a lot of people forgot about that. It was like when all those World War III memes were trending in January 2020. And again, Democrats and Republicans in the Senate came together to create a resolution that called on Trump to stop and only use military force against Iran if he had congressional approval. What did he do? President Trump vetoed it again. Trump kept us in every single war that we were already in. He did not end America's longest war. Biden did. Corporate media will criticize Biden over the way he pulled out, but at the end of the day, he ended a war that was as old as me. I think he did a net good here. And the government was going to topple anyways. It was a puppet government. In 2020, President Trump wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act and use the military against his own constituents. Let me say that again. He wanted to deploy the American military against the American people in the streets of our nation's capital. Many people supported Trump because they believed he would end corruption. Well, he got into office, and what happened? It turns out he is corrupt. Lobbyists run his campaign and big money interests ran his administration. He went after Hillary for corruption, and I loved that. He was sounding like Bernie Sanders. Bernie used to criticize Hillary for paid speeches to Goldman Sachs, and then Trump criticized Hillary for corruption as well, but then Goldman Sachs ended up in Trump's administration. It was Gary Cohn and Steve Mnuchin, and I think there were some others. There's literally a website I found that shows all of the lobbyists in Trump's administration. The list is so long. There are like hundreds. They literally just run the show. Okay, next point. Because of lobbying from Israel, Trump recognized a region of Syria known as the Golan Heights as a part of Israel. He also gave Israel billionaire donor Miriam Adelson the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And this is a really interesting quote that I read from that article. It says, former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said, the president was speaking as if the US military was a mercenary force for hire, as if there were no American interests in forging and keeping a peaceful world order, as if the American organizing principle was money. And the article basically says the Trump presidency and the Trump campaigns are purely transactional. There's a word for that. Corruption. Trump never tried to get money out of politics. He never pushed for the overturning of Citizens United. Think about that. He has all the Supreme Court justices in there, but he doesn't advocate for overturning Citizens United, which would get money out of politics, or would help get money out of politics. Because if you guys don't know, Citizens United is the Supreme Court decision that allows corporations to donate unlimited amounts of money into political campaigns through super PACs, because it ruled that corporations are people too. Okay, so I'm gonna make a full video on this next point, but Trump did run this country like a business. And that's the problem. Businesses are transactional. Not only that, but businesses are not democracies. They are dictatorships. Oh my gosh, this is such a point that I believe in strongly, this next point. A lot of Democrats do not define Trump correctly. They don't tell the story of Trump correctly. A lot of Dems just say, Trump is selfish, he's a madman, he's an anomaly, he came out of nowhere, and he's causing chaos. And a lot of those things are right, but they don't connect it to the system. They don't connect it because the American people are mad at the system. A lot of establishment Dems don't connect Trump to the system. They don't connect the story of Trump to the system. You know how most of us, Democrat or Republican, agree that our political system is corrupt and big money undermines democracy? Trump successfully made himself out to be an outsider to that system. But the reality is, he is that system personified. He is the system in its final form. He is the latest stage of capitalism. He admitted to bribing off politicians on the debate stage. That's what he would say on the debate stage for the Republican primaries in 2015, 2016. He would say, I know the system is corrupt. I know politicians take bribes because I bribed off everyone on this stage, and when I gave them money, I would get a call back. That's how he was like the right-wing Bernie Sanders. And then when he got into office, he took bribes from the rich. Big money ran his administration, and they run his campaign. Then he tried to undermine democracy from the driver's seat, right? We're all mad that big money is undermining our democracy through their lobbyists and their campaign contributions and through the media, through corporate media. But Donald Trump is a guy who is completely controlled by big money interests. He is a puppet of them. He does whatever they say. He does whatever they pay him to do. And now all of these big money interests are directly undermining democracy through his attempt to steal the election and his second attempt, which is probably going to happen. This is a post on 4chan that got it right, courtesy of Kyle Kalinske. I found this because of his show, but it says, the world's richest man, who's literally trying to insert computer chips into people's brains, bought one of the largest social media companies with the help of Qatar and Saudi Arabia to help elect another billionaire president who has direct ties to multiple sex traffickers like Jeffrey Epstein and P. Diddy. There is active censorship of posts critical of Trump following requests from the Trump campaign, confirmed by the New York Times, and clear favoritism and boosting given to right-wing accounts. Where are the conspiracy theorists at? Where are the tabloids running full-page exposés on this? Where are all the congressional subpoenas from Republicans? All the things they've spent the past 10 years accusing other social media companies and Democrats of doing with no evidence, they're now doing out in the open. Where are all the right-wingers who say they're concerned about the First Amendment, and of ultra-wealthy cabals running the world, and of sex trafficking rings, and inserting chips into people's brains, and of corrupt politicians? Hello? And yeah, that pretty much sums up what I mean when I say Trump is the system personified. He is the system in its final form. He is the latest stage of capitalism. And I wish Democrats would make that argument. Like, I don't even see Bernie Sanders really making that argument. The only one I see telling the story somewhat correctly is AOC. Like, I always see her posting on Instagram, like, Trump and his billionaire friends and his billionaire campaign contributors. And it's like, yes, that's what we should be doing. But I think a lot of corporate Democrats don't want to go after Trump on the angle of corruption because they are corrupt too. Like Kamala Harris, I saw an article that said Kamala Harris has more billionaire donors than Donald Trump. And they don't want to threaten their money source. They don't want to threaten themselves. And so they can't tie it back to the system because that criticism also applies to them. But the thing is, like, when you don't tell that story correctly, I worry that people still believe Trump is a populist, because I saw this guy on CNN. CNN had a panel, and there was like this Republican guy. He was like a prominent Republican. I don't remember what he did, but he was saying, oh, people might not like what Trump says, but Trump is outside the system, which the people hate. And it's like, no, Trump is the system. He is the system personified. And I don't know, man. Like, do people still believe Trump is an outsider to the system in 2024? Like, I get in 2015, 2016, if you believe that, because he didn't have a record and it's like people were just taking a chance. But in 2024, he has a record and like all the info is out there. But sometimes I wonder, am I just in a media bubble and I'm only seeing this information and other people are in another media bubble and they're not seeing that stuff? Because like, I saw Logan and Jake Paul saying like Trump isn't bought, like, or they said like Vivek Ramaswamy isn't bought. I don't know, man. Like, that's the one thing I worry about for this election. Like, that could mean Trump wins. Even in 2015, 2016, though, he did reveal that he was part of the system. Like, he said he used to bribe off politicians. And so he was on one side of the equation. So it makes sense that when he went into office, he would just flip to the other side of the equation. There were like 7 other people on the panel and they were all Democrats, establishment Democrats, but none of them pushed back on it. And maybe because they think being an outsider is bad, but I'm like, dude, this is so easy, and this is how Trump wins. This is how he won the first time, and this is how he's gonna win again if he does win. I mean, Trump is arguably the most corrupt of them all, the most insider of them all, because he not only spent years as the bribee, he spent years as the briber, right? So he's been in the system on more sides than most politicians. Trump supporters will say, oh, he's just surrounding himself with the wrong people. But I'm just like, what happened to the buck stops here? I mean, if Trump was, before he was president, if he was the one bribing off politicians, do you not think that he would be okay with that when he's in office? Don't you think he just lied? Like, if you really don't believe in bribery, legalized bribery, then you would have a principled stance against it like Bernie Sanders and only take small dollar donations. And I feel like a prominent theme on this channel is going to be me saying this is why Bernie Sanders should have been president. And that's because Bernie Sanders should have been president. But the thing is, Democrats might get away with this. They might get away with not telling the story of Trump correctly because Trump doesn't tell the story of Kamala Harris correctly either. Like, I saw an Alex Jones clip and he said, Kamala Harris is not this Bernie Sanders college campus liberal who Trump is making her out to be. Kamala Harris is a part of the military industrial complex. And I'm like, wait, why is he speaking facts? Like, Kamala Harris, I believe she's always supported inflating the military budget, and she supports keeping Biden's policy on Israel. Like, she'll say she wants a ceasefire, but then she will support continuing arming and funding the genocide. Alex Jones was kind of correct there too. And maybe Trump is kind of in the same boat. Like, he doesn't want to do that systemic criticism of Kamala Harris because it's going to threaten Trump too. Like, that criticism flies back on him and his donors are going to start to leave him. And so I don't like the stage that we're in where both of our major candidates are corrupt, and we can do better than this. And yeah. Okay, I have an adrenaline rush now. I'm like, I need to take a deep breath because that was just that big rant. But it's like 3 a.m. and I'm trying not to yell here so people don't wake up, but I'm getting passionate. And that's good, I think. But Kamala Harris. We're on to Kamala Harris now. Kamala Harris is corrupt. And I honestly didn't really think this. Oh yeah, back on Trump, like, I think maybe people still believe Trump is a populist because populist, by the way, if you guys don't know, means for the people. And so Trump turned out to be a fake populist. He's not actually for the people. And I think people still believe Trump is a populist because he's really good at branding. And like, there were times where this year and in the past years, like, I instinctively saw Trump as a populist. Even when I see Trump on video, I'm like, I think he's a populist. I think he's a regular guy, a working class guy, because of the way he speaks. I mean, he's funny, he's charismatic. He genuinely does seem like he has a likable personality, at least on an interpersonal level. I consider myself an entertainer, and I can respect when someone is a good entertainer. I can recognize charisma. I give credit where credit is due. But on the policy, he's not good. I've spent years studying what makes a likable personality, and Trump has it. And he's an amazing storyteller. Like, he's good at taking unconnected things and connecting them to create a narrative that benefits him. Unfortunately, he uses storytelling in a dishonest way. I think he just has the aura of a regular person, and that's why a lot of people, including me, when we see him, we think, oh, that's just a regular working class guy. I mean, he makes inappropriate jokes, he shoots from the hip, his personality is just like my dad's. But I think that's all just branding, and it's all surface level stuff, because if you look at what he actually did and what he actually believes behind closed doors, it's like, okay, that dude is an authoritarian, he's an elitist. And I saw Alex Jones say this too, but this third time Trump is running is the most establishment Trump we've ever seen. Because in 2016, he positioned himself as Bernie Sanders, as a populist, as anti-establishment. And then in 2020, what was he saying? The radical left, the socialists, the communists, the Marxists, they're coming to burn down the suburbs. And Joe Biden is a socialist Trojan horse. He was positioning himself as the establishment, defending against the rebels, defending against the radicals, defending against the populists, defending against the anti-establishment people. And like, you know, Joe Biden is a socialist Trojan horse. It sounds like Joe Biden is the anti-establishment in that storyline. It sounds like Joe Biden is the populist in that storyline. Joe Biden is the rebel. He made Joe Biden look cooler than he really was. And then this time around, the third time around in 2024, he's just gotten way, way, way more establishment. Like, he's saying we need to do the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, which was the law that allowed Japanese internment to happen. And he's just repeating Nazi talking points at this point. He says like, oh, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, which is a talking point espoused by this Nazi group called Blood Tribe. And he's like, oh, they're poisoning the blood of this country. We need to get rid of the enemy within. You sound like the establishment, because you are the establishment. He's like, oh, we need law and order. You sound like a protector of the status quo. And of course, I'm in favor of law and order too. Everyone is. But when you center your campaign around these authoritarian policies, that's a departure from 2015 and 2016, where he was like, we're going to fight the corrupt establishment. And Tim Walsh trotted out the weird attack. But I think a better attack would have been out of touch, because out of touch is more based in policy, whereas weird sounds like a personal attack. And out of touch kind of also encapsulates the same energies as weird. I mean, he's just out of touch now. Like, Kyle Klinsky says it best. Like, in 2015, 2016, Trump sounded like a populist, right? He sounded like Bernie Sanders. He was anti-establishment. And then in 2020, he sounded like your grandpa drunk on Fox News and One America News Network. And then in 2024, he's just a full-blown Nazi and fascist. And Trump was on Truth Social posting about the trans boxer, who turns out she wasn't actually trans. And he never redacted that. He never issued a correction. He just spread fake news and let it happen because he knew it would energize his base. But anyways, it's like, no one cares about that. Like, you're so out of touch. It's the economy, stupid. And trans fear-mongering is not an issue that gets people to the polls. And even then, like, trans people are not this pandemic that conservatives make them out to be. They're just regular people. And they're a very, very small percentage of the population. Like, I saw a study that said conservatives overestimate the amount of trans people in the country because they just talk about them so much. Conservative media talks about them so much, and conservative politicians talk about them so much. Because they know they can't win on the economy. I mean, people want to know how they're going to afford life. And Donald Trump is talking about everything but that. And the only thing I'll give him is he said no tax on overtime and tips, but there's a clip of him saying when he was a boss, he wouldn't give people overtime. He didn't like to pay overtime, and he would just fire people who took overtime pay. After recording this, I learned that Trump's No Tax on Tips Act is a loophole that would benefit high-income professionals and business owners. From what I'm gathering and from what I'm understanding, they would be able to recharacterize their income as tips. And so they would be able to get no taxes on that. In response to this, Kamala Harris released a no tax on tips plan that is limited to service workers only, thereby preventing this tax loophole, this tax cut, and ultimately this tax abuse by high income earners. Ultimately, under Kamala's plan, the people who will get no tax on tips are the people who actually make tips from service jobs, as it should be. And I just saw Trump on Joe Rogan saying Kamala's campaigning on increasing taxes. And then Joe was like, well, she just means for like the top 1%. And then Trump's like, yeah, well then they're gonna move jobs elsewhere. And that means that Trump was framing Kamala's increase on the richest as an increase for everyone. He was lying. And Trump is actually the one who wants to cut taxes for the rich, despite Republicans' framing. And despite his framing, he accidentally leaked the truth. And it's like, okay, that's just trickle-down economics. You're just an old school establishment Republican. I think Trump lost his magic. He lost his touch. We're in a populist anti-establishment era, and I think Trump has forgotten that. He forgot why he won, or maybe he didn't even know why he won in the first place. Maybe he surrounded himself with yes men and he just went too extreme down the right-wing path. What I see is that in 2024, Trump is extremely out of touch and he's revealed himself to be the establishment. And I think this election hinges on the question of whether voters in swing states see it too or not. Hey guys, my phone is running out of storage, so I'm gonna need to separate this into multiple parts. I need to get this video off my phone so I can start working on the next one. The next video, as you may be expecting, will be my analysis on Kamala Harris. I think it'll be way shorter than this video because I won't have to go into the history. Kamala Harris doesn't have a record as president, and she hasn't dominated our lives for the past decade. And the video after that will be who I'm voting for. And I actually wasn't expecting this video to be as long as it turned out, and so it took longer than expected to edit. But I'm really going to practice saying everything I need to say when filming so I don't have to go back and add more clips or add voiceovers. I did it as minimally as I possibly could for this video, and I'm going to get that down to 0. I know that people want podcasts these days, so think of this like my podcast. And since that's the case, the good news is I'll be able to get videos out relatively quickly, especially compared to our main channel. I'm super happy about that. So yeah, I'm going to try to post every single day until election day. And then after election day, I'll still post a lot. But when we get more into regular times, I'm looking to post at least once a week. So basically whenever I feel like talking about politics, which I feel like will be once a week. So yeah, Thanks for watching until this point, and I'm excited for this ride.